Hello and welcome back to the Karma Stories podcast. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today I have 5 stories for you from the Malicious Compliance subreddit. Make sure to follow us on your podcasting platform of choice, and if you're on YouTube, please hit that like button down below. It really does help us out. Alright, on to today's stories. Let's jump right in. This story comes to us from Rear Engineer. Project manager said, if it's a problem, the pressure test will catch it. Alright then, let's find out. Back when I was a junior engineer, I was working with a piping contractor supporting a gas plant project that was in the final stretch before commissioning. We were under intense pressure to hit deadlines, and everyone was feeling the heat. One of my responsibilities was reviewing materials before installation. Basic quality control to make sure we weren't about to install something that would bite us later. Then the pipes arrived. These were large diameter, high pressure pipes for a critical gas line. But the moment I saw them, I knew something was off. The mill markings didn't match the material certificates, and some of the welds seemed to look rough. When we took a closer look, we found surface defects and laminations at the bevel, classic signs of poor quality steel from a dodgy mill. I flagged it immediately. My lead engineer took one look and agreed. These pipes weren't fit for purpose. We raised it with the project manager, expecting him to do the obvious thing, that is to reject the batch and order replacements from an approved supplier. But this project manager wasn't like most project managers. He wasn't an engineer, had a Bachelor of Commerce, and had landed the job thanks to his uncle, a senior executive. He had zero technical knowledge and didn't care to learn. To him, just another job to push through quickly to up his bonus. And rejecting the pipes would cause delays, something he was desperate to avoid, since it would probably affect his bonus. His response? The supplier says they meet spec, so they meet spec, just install them and move on. I pushed back, explaining that if these pipes failed under pressure, we were looking at a major incident. He waved me off. Just get it done. If it's a problem, the pressure test will catch it. Alright mate, let's see how that goes. The pipes were installed as is, and we moved on to pressure testing. I stood back and watched. As we ramped up the pressure, the pipe's weld seam split wide open and ruptured the pipe. The force of the failure sent a shockwave through the system, and a few of the pipe supports even bent. The pressure test failed spectacularly. Now, instead of a minor delay to replace the pipes before installation, we had a catastrophic failure that shut down work for weeks. The entire line had to be cut out, re-welded, and retested. The supplier was blacklisted, and an internal investigation was launched into how the pipes had been approved in the first place. We were also made by the client to bear the cost of the rework. As expected, the project manager tried to shift the blame, but my lead engineer simply pulled up the email chain where we had clearly raised the defect concerns. Management didn't take long to connect the dots. The project manager was taken off the project immediately and was sacked a month later following initial investigation results, and even his uncle couldn't save him. Never saw him again after that, and last I heard, he decided to pursue a career outside of the industry. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Craig White. It says, as an engineering manager who once was the junior and senior engineer himself, if someone raises a red flag, I push the stop button until at least 3 people, including the one that raised the red flag in the first place, prove to me we are good to go. It's okay to be a non-engineer project manager so long as you use the team wisely. Another commenter called One-Legged Stool said, the project manager is definitely to blame, but I would put some blame on the company for crappy process. Engineer and quality control should have final say if materials get used or not business. I say that as someone who is on the business side and deal with engineers and quality control every day on whether materials meet spec or not. OP responded and said, exactly. The real issue was that the process allowed someone with no technical background to override engineering and quality control decisions just to meet a deadline. If the system had worked properly, those pipes would have never made it past the gate. It's either comply or walk in that situation, which happens more often than not with smaller contractors that operate like cowboys. I feel like the major problem in this situation is the fact that the boss was a Nepo hire who had no experience in the area and didn't know how to be a project manager. In this case, it was a guy with a fancy title who didn't know how to do the job, but just wanted to throw his weight around. Like the first commenter said, it's okay to be a non-engineer project manager as long as you use your team wisely. All those people on that team are there for a reason. They know what they're doing, so listen to them. I don't understand why you'd stick your neck out so far when you have people who get the job done. Use them. Then you can sit back and just relax because things are running properly. This story comes to us from OKP3414. You want the engineering staff to do the ordering as well? You got it. So for those who are unaware, companies usually have engineering staff talk with engineering of parts suppliers, detail down the specifications and whatnot, and then the list goes to the purchasing department or the purchasing folks of that particular engineering department. This is because engineers don't want to involve themselves with 30, 60, 90 days due, terms and conditions of sale, validity of quotes, remember the correct quote PDFs because they have hundreds of them, and working with finance department to understand what is best for the overall financial health. Also, in fairly large companies, you have buyers dedicated for each vendor or buyers dedicated to certain products, like pneumatics, electrical, heavy-duty construction, mechanical components, made-to-order parts, etc. And the buyers themselves have internal pathways and routes so that each required product finds themselves with the correct buyer. Because the engineers are dicks, and to lower their workload, they will more often than not dump all the parts on a single buyer. A new VP comes in, sees buyers as bloat, fat to be trimmed, and makes a decision. He lays off 8 buyers in that engineering department, which makes whole factory material handling systems that handle nearly all the materials moving through multi-100,000 square footage from raw materials warehouses and yards to finished goods sections. We had to order the stuff ourselves. Before we did though, 3 senior staff engineers asked that to be sent in a department-wide email. VP does so. And now starts the compliance. Vendors ask, what due terms do you want? Not aware of how deep you have to go, engineers ask for the best price. Due in 15 days after delivery. Sure, let's do that. Turns out, that vendor usually was on a net 90-day due, because paying off in the next quarter would be more sensible. What department do you want me to bill it to? Of course mine, because I'm ordering it. Engineers blissfully unaware the billing happens by sales department as it gets easier to finally do profitability analysis since whichever sales department got the contract pays for the parts too. Turns out our department didn't have a single process or work route to get bills and pay them. Now, by the time we get to the bottom of the purchasing list, the offered quotes have expired, so we get back to vendor sales teams and get a new quote and wait, doing nothing much until we get quotes and then order stuff. End of quarter, department finances are a total massive effed up mess, 8-figure mess. CFO is red-faced, steaming from her ears, trying to find out what is going on. Engineers, oh, the best price was net due 15 days, so I selected that. Well, I was ordering it, so the bill should come to us. Why would other departments pay for the stuff that I'm asking for? Who asked you to do the ordering yourself? This is not your job. Everyone shows her the email. End of day, VP walked out to be never seen again. All the buyers who were let go were rehired, and all of them negotiated a pay increase of $6.50 an hour. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Melonians. It says, this is why I, as an engineer, can order whatever parts I like, and the finance people sort out pricing. I never get to see a bill. On the rare occasion I need to procure something, I establish that the firm can supply it, and I email parts and say, buy me this, I want it delivered here. See, this is the problem when somebody who doesn't know what they're doing comes into a company and wants to, quote-unquote, trim the fat like they said. Well, they decide to trim that fat, but they trim it back a little too far and end up cutting through some of the tendons that keep that company working. This story is a prime example of why I believe that any managing person should be somebody who worked on the team previously, at least in one of the roles there, so they know exactly what it is that they're managing. And if they haven't worked on that team before, it should be a requirement that they do before they assume the manager role. Work 3 or 4 weeks here, get to know your team, get to know how things go, and then you're allowed to make decisions. This story comes to us from Tierra DiCapi. I will work on that Saturday. You put me on the roster. At my ex-place of work, they had the bright idea to switch the Saturday schedule. Instead of the rotation of 4 Saturdays, now people would be scheduled on either the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th Saturday of the month. Right. Those of you readers who have ever had to make work schedules already know when the problem will present itself. I repeatedly asked those planners before the introduction of the new roster if they were sure they wanted to implement this in this way. They repeatedly assured me yes, this will be a more clear schedule, and if everyone had a set Saturday, there would be no need for further planning. If you say so. I was assigned Saturday number 3, no problem with that. Now, I was the Veronica there, my other colleagues were not interested in stirring the pot, so the first month, no problem. The second month, 5 Saturdays. So the team that was assigned to the first Saturday had to show up for Saturday number 5. Then, on the first Saturday of the following month, the team from Saturday number 2 had to come in. And on Saturday number 2, yep, they expected team number 3 to be present. And they were, except for this Veronica. Even on the Friday before, 2 of my group, number 3 colleagues, mentioned to me something related to the next day. And I told those 2, oh, but I won't be there. But we're supposed to do the Saturday shift tomorrow. Not me. I'm assigned to Saturday number 3, not number 2. But we are on the schedule. Well, I don't know about you, but they told me I'm on the schedule for Saturday number 3, and tomorrow is the second Saturday, so it's not my turn. Definitely not. And what do you know, next morning, Saturday number 2, at 9:35, the phone rang at my house. We have to be at work at 9 o'clock to open doors at 9:30. You do understand that I had switched off my cell phone before going to sleep. My sister answered. I could hear her from my room, where I was leisurely lazing in my bed. Hello? Yes, she's home but asleep. Work? I'm sure she doesn't. She explicitly told me she's going to sleep in today because she isn't scheduled. Yes, I told her that. Absolutely not. We have an understanding that when she's sleeping late, I have to let her. I'm definitely not waking her up when it's her free Saturday. Yeah, I don't know about that. I can tell her to call you when she wakes up, but it's her free Saturday, so I can't guarantee that she will or when. My sister can also be a Veronica. Actually, she did not say the next words literally, but something in this direction. Well, not my monkeys, not my circus. Have a nice day. Goodbye. I had wanted her to say that probably someone must have made an error in the planning of the roster, but the monkey thing was also very cool. After she hung up, she came to my room and we had a big laugh. And the following Monday, not one of the people of the planning, nor my supervisor, nor any of the higher-ups dared to confront me about my absence on Saturday number 2, nor on the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. And on Saturday number 3, I was there, alongside the whole team of Saturday number 4. We had one surplus worker that day. But would you believe that I still had to send out an email every month to remind everyone that I will not work on Saturday number 1, nor on number 2. I will be present on Saturday number 3, but not on number 4, and absolutely definitely not on Saturday number 5. Yeah, I'm that petty. They kept on messing it up for almost a year. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Snewwords1252. It says, so, okay, they held on to the you're on the first Saturday of the month, which is now the second Saturday of the month, rather than go back to you're rostered on every 4th week. FFS. You must have been back on with your team by the end of the year, right? I feel like everybody who worked at this place should have come together and kinda coordinated that nobody showed up on Saturday number 5, because nobody was actually told that they had to work on Saturday number 5. They had 1, 2, 3, and 4, but there was no mention of a Saturday number 5. I find this kind of funny because there are 4 months out of the year that have Saturday number 5. Out of 12 months, that's a third of the year. So somebody in scheduling definitely didn't take that into account. I think OP needs to remember that there are strength in numbers. One person doing something that goes against the grain is an annoyance, but a whole bunch of people doing it is a problem that needs to be solved. This story comes to us from Lerock's Mummy. Manglement rides again. I submitted this as a reply to a previous post, but it seems like it should stand on its own. Sometimes it's not just software developers that are short-sighted. Manglement falls in that category too. My company changed their email processing system to a much more sophisticated program than what we were using. Before rolling it out, we all had to be trained on the new program, and I was scheduled for one of the last classes, which of course was delayed. Enter Manglement. They decided to run a test on the new program, so they asked my team to switch over to the new system for 2 hours so they could gauge how it would work. The first 2 times they tried this, I raised my hand and asked if I could continue to work on the old system as my training was not scheduled until X date next week. My request was granted. The 3rd time they tried a test, my training class had been delayed again by this same Manglement member, let's call him Paul. This time, my request to stay on the old system was denied. I told Paul I had no idea how to use that new system since I had not been in a training class, but he insisted I use it anyway. It might as well have been the controls of a spaceship. Nothing was labeled, and I had no idea what all those icons meant. I could see the incoming email, and I know how to type, so I replied to the email, and then just sat there doing nothing. After about 20 minutes of sitting unproductive, Paul walks up to me and asked why I was not answering emails. I said, I did, it's right here. He said, why didn't you send it and move on to the next email? I replied, I don't know how. As I keep telling you, I have not gone through the training. Oh well, I needed a break from work anyway. Sometimes the only way to get your point across is to beat them at their own game. OP did add an edit down at the bottom. It says, edit, for context, this happened about 20 to 25 years ago, and we went from the Adante program to Kana. I don't think Adante exists any longer, but it was as simple as riding a bike versus running the space shuttle with Kana. Once I was trained on Kana and used it for a while, I was fine. Okay, I scanned over the comments on this one, and instead of singling anyone out, I can tell you that a lot of people down there were asking why the send button on an email interface wouldn't be readily apparent. Like, who made that design decision that you can't just look at it and go, oh, this is how I send an email? You actually have to have training to figure out how to send an email. That's horrible. This story comes to us from DobDob2121. You told me to treat it like a finished product. I used to work for a company that constantly, but carefully, innovated with its employees and technology. I had a very busy job that involved a lot of travel. The company had computers at each of its offices. Employees like me would use them to manage all of our complex jobs and travel arrangements, which were core functions of the company. One day, I was at an office, and some people from IT had a small table set up with a sign asking for 5 minutes of our time to help them make our computers easier and faster for us to use. I volunteered, and they had me sit at their table in front of a notebook. Each page in the notebook mimicked a redesign of the computer screens that we used. The IT testers asked me to interact with the mock-up just the way I would interact with the computer if I had just now walked up to it and found it like this. They wanted to see how ready their design was for employees to use without additional training. I tapped the buttons on the page mock-ups and they flipped to the resultant next screens in their notebook, all while using a stopwatch and making notes. I successfully logged in and navigated the menus to the function I needed. When I tried to use the function, however, I got stuck in an endless loop of trying to back out of it when I couldn't figure out how to use it. They kept flipping back and forth between 2 pages that each had a back button I was trying to use to get back to the menu. I stood up, grabbed my bags, and started to leave. They became quite animated and asked me to stay and complete a feedback questionnaire. I told them that I just had. If I had encountered a computer like that at work, I would have just gone to another computer, leaving my login active and compromising corporate security on that computer because it didn't work, and I didn't have time to figure out what was wrong with it and how to fix it. They said that they really needed more information in order to get it right. I said I agreed with them as I walked away. That redesign never got implemented. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Sir Dinadin. It says, "We used this type of paper prototyping for screen design and navigation, and it was quite successful. If the user gets stuck or asks for something that was missing, like a delete button, we would add a delete button to the screen and make a note to add screens supporting this function, then carry on testing. In the case you described, we would add a home button so you could break out of the loop and start again, or ask you where did you want to go and add the necessary button. It does not sound like these developers were trained properly on how to run this type of test. You need to start asking questions when the user has issues. One trick is to ask them to tell you why they pressed each button and what do they expect next. This is called thinking out loud. That's the whole point of this type of test, to find missing functionality or data." That's kind of where I got stuck on this story as well, when they started flipping back and forth between two pages and they let it continue, but didn't ask questions of OP on what they were actually trying to do. It's like, are you guys really understanding what your purpose is here? I think OP figured that out as well when they didn't want to answer any more questions at the end, because they realized just how incompetent the testers were. So they walked away and wiped their hands of it. I don't blame them one bit. If you enjoy daily Reddit stories, I encourage you to follow and add us to your favorites on whichever podcasting platform you enjoy the most. And if you're watching and listening on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button and drop a like on the video. It really helps us out. I thank you for watching and listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.